Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Good evening, and may the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. Now let us read to us our page 10. It says, as the present day confusion and misunderstanding of the scriptures among Christendom is proven by the multiplicity of sects, it is evident that the churches are in the Laodicean state, wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. And by denying the church of this plain statement proves the words of the true witness correct, and knowest not. While they think they are right, the true witness declares, thou art all wrong. What greater deception than this? Read Revelation 3 verse 14 to verse 18. Since the Bible plainly says that it is the truth that shall make us free, we cannot too closely examine ourselves and the things we believe. For if no two of this multi-sectarian Christianity believe alike, it is evident that most, if not all, are blind. And as the Bible is correct in the words, if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. Then it would be useless to dispute the truth. The world is headed for the ditch. Would not this indisputable statement arouse the professed people of God from their slumber and sleep? Past experiences prove that many will say, it is not I. Knowing that this deception would arise in the last days, God has devised this pictorial representation of the truth by which He is able to enlighten His church and call out His people. I remember the statement in Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, page 101. It says, the great day of the Lord is near. It is near, and hasted greatly. Volume 5, page 101. But where do we behold the true Advent Spirit, who are preparing to stand in that time of temptation, which is just before us? The people to whom God has entrusted the sacred, solemn, testing truths for this time are sleeping at their posts. They say by their actions, we have the truth. We are rich and increase with goods and have need of nothing. While the true witness declares, thou knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. With what fidelity do these words portray the present condition of the church? Knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. Messages of warning dictated by the Holy Spirit are borne by the servants of God. Defects of character are presented before the hearing, but they say, that does not represent my case. I do not accept the message you bring. I am doing the best I can. I believe the truth. Volume 5, page 101. Now, I would like to read this admonition given in the Shepherd's Rod in 1SR on page 150. Instead of applying it to other people and times and thereby diverting the instruction intended for the church. 1SR 150, it says, instead of applying it to other people and times, and thereby diverting the instructions intended for the church. That is the admonition given by the Shepherd's Rod. Now, according to 2SR, page 10, the proof that among Christendom there is a misunderstanding of the scriptures is the multiplicity of sects. Or in other words, if the scriptures had not been misunderstood, or there is no misunderstanding on the scriptures, there is no reason why Christendom were divided into different sects. And the absolute fact is that even though they were already in such deplorable condition, they know it not. And the Shepherd's Rod says here in 2SR page 10, I would like to read again, as the present day confusion and misunderstanding of the scriptures among Christendom is proven. So the proof is that the multiplicity of sects, it is evident that the churches are in the Laodicean state, wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. And by denying the charge of this plain statement proves the words of the true witness correct, and knowest not. So they themselves, they did not know that they were in a deplorable condition. Now, who could deny the absolute fact that we, the Bedean, are divided into different groups at this present time? Is such condition fulfilling the words of Christ? Here in tract number 6, it says here on page 11, Christ's prayer. John 17, verse 21 to verse 23. So you can read. And it says, unceasing theological speculations on the scriptures with the resultant diversity of opinions and pleasing fables are continually increasing confusion, dissension, divisions, which spawn conflicting creeds and sects, whereas Christians should be doing nothing but proving to the world by perfect union that the Father has sent the Son. It says, showing that he recognizes only one denomination, Christ said, and other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring. And they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. John chapter 10, verse 16. The existing disunion among Christians of today is not, therefore, fulfilling God's but Satan predetermined purpose. No one can deny such historical fact that in the days of Beti-Hotep, according to 2TG 34 on page 28 and page 29, the shepherd's rod, the books that inspiration so named and inspired its contents, being the only rod in the world that can be heard speaking, the Lord commands that you should hear it, that you do not waste any time in deciding between the rod literature and some other, for there is none other today than the rod literature which God recommends you to hear. And when you hear the rod, you will find yourself wrapped in the love of Christ and in the arms of God. Try it. 2TG 34, page 28 and page 29, plainly telling us that in the days of Beti-Hotep, there is only one rod speaking, but not in our days. In our days, there are many rods that speaking. And I fully believe that such typological event in the days of Moses is more definitely applied in our days than in the days of Hotep. I would like to read here in 1SR page 95. It says, the spirit of prophecy says in Patriarchs and Prophets, page 251, that the rod of Moses was a symbol of God's power. The shepherd's rod, power of God. The sheep, God's people. The shepherd's rod is an instrument which is used to catch sheep. The rod in this instance is an instrument which is used to catch people. What could it be? It cannot be anything else but something wonderful, plain, clear-cutting Bible truth which could not be contradicted. When it is revealed, it will produce serpents, meaning people or converts, by reformation. But the Egyptians did the same also, for they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents, and perhaps more in number, for every man cast his rod, but they were counterfeit or counterfeit rod, symbols of hypocrisy, untrue Christians. But Moses' rod swallowed the rods of the Egyptians, symbol of victory for true Israel. The result is opposition, but true Israel wins at last. 1SR, page 95. And to repeat again, I fully believe that historical event, the repetition, is more apparent in our days than in the days of Beti-Hotep, due to the fact that according to 2TG 34, 28, and 29, in the days of Beti-Hotep, there is only one rod that speaks throughout the whole world, but not the same in the days in which we are living in. There are many rods today. And here in Answerer number 1, page 19, it says, never mind the other fellow, brethren, you have barely enough time to look after yourself. And moreover, do not measure the truth with the rod of man, but with the rod of God. Hear ye the rod, and him what appointed it. Micah 6 verse 9 urges the Lord. So there are only two classes of rod, the rod of man and the rod of God. Now, according to SR, I would like to go back again to that reading. I would like to read the last portion. It says, past experiences prove that many will say, it is not I. Or in other words, no one will accept that they are wrong. Or I remember this statement in Timely Greetings in 1TG number 4. It says, page 22, do not expect too much of the Laodiceans, though for you know that it is just as hard for them to accept truth as it was for most of us when we are in their place. Why? Because for most human beings, it is hard to say we are wrong. Only a few can shun pride of opinion and admit their errors. It is for this very reason that newly revealed truth is never popular. When the truth for today came to us, we believe it not because others did, but because we ourselves clearly saw it. Let us thus continue, but let us be patient, tolerant, and charitable with all. 1TG number 4, pages 22, page 23. Although the admonition given in 2TG number 17, I would like to read again. It says, on page 8, it is better for all of us to acknowledge our failures than to evade the truth. For it is the truth that shall make us free. Now, look at the example of the Jewish people. Here in Desire of Ages, on page 280, it says here, it was this that proved the ruin of the Jews, and it will prove the ruin of many souls in our own day. Thousands are making the same mistake as did the Pharisees whom Christ reproved at Matthew's feast. Rather than give up some cherished idea or discard some idol of opinion, many refuse the truth which comes down from the Father of light. They trust in self and depend upon their own wisdom and do not realize their spiritual poverty. They insist on being saved in some way by which they may perform some important work. When they say that there is no way of waving self into the work, they reject the salvation provided. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. Here in Testimonies for the Church, volume 7, page 199 and page 200, it says, God cannot connect with those who live to please themselves, to make themselves first. Those who do this will in the end be last of all. The sin that is most nearly hopeless and incurable is pride of opinion, self-conceit. This stands in the way of all growth. When a man has defects of character, yet fails of realizing this, when he is so imbued with self-sufficiency that he cannot see his fault, how can he be cleansed? They that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. How can one improve when he thinks his ways perfect? So of all the sin, this sin is hopeless and incurable, the pride of opinion. And it was stated in tract, let me read to you. Here in tract number 4, B.T. Hodder says, on page 53, it says, so the sins of prejudice, pride, and cowardice work like a cancer in the heart, lurking beneath the surface, only to rob their host of eternal glory. Track number 4, page 53, but in volume 7, 199, page 200, it says, of all the sin, pride of opinion is the most hopeless and incurable. Now, brothers and sisters, if we are really honest and sincere and a full-fledged shepherd's rod believers, first of all, here in track number 5, page 6, this is the admonition given by the shepherd's rod. It says, so before a person can climb the ladder of truth, he must first of all free himself from erroneous theories which keep him bound in darkness, and to lose himself from such weights of error so as to reach the top step of the ladder of truth. He must carefully investigate and prove all things in open-mindedness. Track number 5, page 6. Or in other words, in track number 13, it says on page 29, I would like to read this reading. And
Let us apply this divine principle. It says, page 28 and 29. In track number 13. Remember that everyone has the right to believe as he will, and that he must give on an account of himself to the Lord only, not to you. Grant to all the freedom of religion that you would have them grant to you. And though a Christian will never sacrifice principle, yet he will ever be as courteous to those who disagree with him as to those who agree. And then it says, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do you even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. And we call it the golden rule. Matthew 7 verse 12. Yeah, thus is the teaching of both. And so to receive all these holy gifts, you must forsake egotism, self-confidence, pride of opinion, and prejudices. So to repeat again, it says that we need to forsake egotism, self-confidence, pride of opinion, and prejudices. Now, let us read 1 SR 217. It says, in 1844, when the announcement was made of the fall of modern Babylon by the preaching of the second angel's message of Revelation 14 verse 8, the wound would have been healed, for Babylon had fallen, and would have brought about the fulfillment of, and all the world wondered after the beast. But Seventh-day Adventists came on the stage of action, thus keeping the thorn in the wound by being proclaimed the only true Protestants since that time. This being so, then as long as Seventh-day Adventists as a body remain true to the principles and doctrines which built this great movement, the wound cannot be healed. Neither can it be said, all the world wondered after the beast. Now, I invite now every Davidian to study closely this paragraph. Now, to begin, the shepherd's rod says that supposed to be in 1844, the wound would have been healed. It says, for Babylon had fallen. That statement plainly indicates that the perfect fulfillment of Revelation 14:8 must be to the period of time when Babylon had fallen, and at the same time, there must be a wound that had been healed. Now, for example, I would like to read to you. Here in the Great Controversy, page 390, it says, so let us focus first to Revelation 14, verse 8. Now, it says here, the Bible declares that before the coming of the Lord, Satan will work with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. And they that receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved, will be left to receive strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9 to 11. So, what is the specific lie mentioned here? But most important of all, the spiritual side is that the reason why they had not been able to escape such lie, but rather they have no power to withstand such lie, but rather they believe it. Why? Because they received not the love of the truth. And because of that, God left them to receive strong delusions. Or in other words, this strong delusion that will come upon the world, our only protection is the present truth. The truth mentioned here is the present truth. And if we reject the present truth, then we will be left by God to receive strong delusion. That is the consequence of rejecting the present truth. That is why in track number 3, pages 10 and 11, it says, consequently, the greatest danger of the people has not been their listening to error, but rather their rejecting present truth. And in 1 TG number 50, page 25, it says, let us read, we see that if we do not fall in love with the truth, and for sure the truth mentioned here is the present truth, deception is inevitable. No, none are deceived by coming in contact with error. For we are in contact with it anyway from the time we are born to the time we die. But everyone who does not love the truth is sure to be deceived, regardless what he may do to avoid it. And those who are satisfied with the truth of yesterday, who are not looking for fresh truth for today from the throne of God, not looking for meat in due season, such ones will find themselves in as terrible a predicament as did the Jews, spewed out. 1 TG number 50, page 25. So that reading plainly indicates that the truth mentioned is the fresh truth, meat in due season, the present truth. Now, let us read again the statement in the Great Controversy 390. It says, the Bible declares that before the coming of the Lord, Satan will work with all power and signs and lying wonders and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness. And they that receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved, will be left to receive strong delusions, that they should believe a lie. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9 to verse 11. Not until this condition shall be reached, and the union of the church with the world shall be fully accomplished throughout Christendom, will the fall of Babylon be complete. And it says, the change is a progressive one, and the perfect fulfillment of Revelation 14 verse 8 is yet future. So the Spirit prophecy made it so plain that the perfect fulfillment of Revelation 14:8 is still in the future. And that statement in the Great Controversy, it was written in 1888. Therefore, in 1888, the prophet is plainly declaring the message of the second angel. Revelation 14 verse 8, the perfect fulfillment are still in the future. Now, here's another statement in 3 Symbolic Code, number 1, page 9. Second or third angel. Question number 146. The Shepherd's Rod, Volume 2, page 230, last paragraph, says that the third angel's message is to be proclaimed the second time. That the second angel's message is to be proclaimed the second time. Which is right. It says, answer. Among Adventists, the term third angel's message is understood to contain the first, second, and the third angel's messages. But not so when we use the expression second angel's message. The Shepherd's Rod is using the term, the third angel's message, to convey the fact that the proclamation of all three angels' messages are to be repeated. So the proclamation of the three angels' messages are to be repeated. And then it says, hence both are correct. The second angel's message is to be proclaimed again in the message of Revelation 18 verse 4. The first angel's message is now being proclaimed anew in the message of the judgment of the living, Malachi 3 verse 1 to 4. While the third angel's message is to be repeated during the loud cry, thus making for the reproclamation collectively of the third angel's message or three angels' messages. So the Shepherd's Rod also plainly declared that the second angel's message will be repeated again. And that is pointing to the perfect fulfillment of that prophetic event. And we know, brothers and sisters, that according to General Conference Special on page 39, it says, in fact, the three angels' messages are applicable to the judgment for the dead only indirectly. For the judgment for the living is the all-important event. That is, the angel is not sent particularly to explain what the judgment does to the dead, but what it is to do to the living. General Conference Special, page 39. So, the three angels' messages, the first, the second, and the third angel's message, is applied to the judgment that pertains to the dead only indirectly. The direct application of these three angels' messages, the first, the second, and the third angel's message, is found in the judgment of the living. And the Shepherd's Rod made it so plain in the reading we read in Old Symbolic Code that the first angel's message will be proclaimed anew in the fulfillment of Malachi 3 verse 1 to 3. 3 Symbolic Code 1 to 9, it says, the first angel's message is now being proclaimed anew in the message of the judgment of the living, Malachi 3 verse 1 to 4. Now, let us go back again, brothers and sisters, to our reading. Concerning Malachi, verses 1 to 3, in track number 3, page 43, it says, so let's read, it says, pointing directly to the time that the investigative judgment shall take place among the living, Malachi parallels both parables in his prophecy, Malachi 3 verse 1 to 3. And then it says, as the cleansings called for in the parables and in Malachi's prophecy have never taken place, the investigative judgment of the living is obviously then yet future. It was written in 1934. So here in track number 3, page 43, the shepherd's rod is very plain by telling that the judgment of the living, which pertains to Malachi 3 verse 1 to 3, are still future in the days of Bethlehem. Therefore, the repetition, the reproclamation of the three angels' messages are still future in the days of Bethlehem, and all of them must be applied directly in the judgment that pertains to the living, according to our reading. Now, let us go back again to our reading in 1SR 217. It says, in 1844, when the announcement was made of the fall of modern Babylon, by the preaching of the second angel's message of Revelation 14 verse 8, the wound would have been healed, for Babylon had fallen, and would have brought about the fulfillment of, and all the world wandered after the beast. But Seventh-day Adventists came on the stage of action, thus keeping the thorn in the wound by being proclaimed the only Protestants since that time. This being so, then as long as Seventh-day Adventists as a body remain true to the principles and doctrines which built this great movement, the wound cannot be healed. Neither can it be said, all the world wandered after the beast. Now, let us enumerate all the important points in this paragraph. First of all, in 1844, when the announcement was made by the fall of Babylon through the message of Revelation 14 verse 8, according to the shepherd's rod, supposed to be that time the wound would have been healed, and then would brought about the fulfillment in Revelation 13 verse 3, saying, all the world wandered after the beast. But the voice of inspiration says, but Seventh-day Adventists come on the stage of action. Or in other words, if God did not raise up a divinely called movement in 1844, the wound would have been healed. Although it was in 1844, the pronouncement of the fall of Babylon. Now, to repeat again, brothers and sisters, I would like to remind again that according to Answerer number 3, page 45, the deadly blow delivered by Martin Luther affects only ecclesiastical half, not the whole. And we know the term ecclesiastical is pointing to the religious body or religious system, because head represent religious organization according to the shepherd's rod. So why is it that the shepherd's rod declared in Answerer number 3, page 45, that the blow affected only the ecclesiastical half, not the ecclesiastical whole, not the whole of ecclesiastical, had been wounded by Martin Luther. Now, I would like to repeat again that the beast revelation cometh from God. But this revelation is the medium used by God to expose, to unmask, or to uncover the traps of the devil. And in this study, we can easily discern that the devil is also studying. And at the time when the devil noticed that God raised up Martin Luther, then in order to preserve or to protect his scheme, he divided his scheme. The other half is found in the leopard-like beast, and the other half is found on the little horned head. Now, remember, brothers and sisters, that the symbolization of the leopard-like beast, as well as the scarlet-colored beast, according to 2SR 111, it says, I would like to read again, we believe that there must be more complete symbolical information for this present generation than for any previous one. Thus, it is very inconsistent and unreasonable of those who have applied the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13 and the scarlet-colored beast of Revelation 17 in addition to the nondescript beast of Daniel 7 as symbols of Rome. Therefore, we can easily understand that the leopard-like beast, brothers and sisters, cannot be represented by the second stage of the Roman world, which we call the ecclesiastical Rome. Now, concerning the pagan Rome and ecclesiastical Rome, it was depicted in the symbolization of the fourth beast of Daniel chapter 7 which is the nondescript beast. Therefore, God revealed to John the leopard-like beast to let God's people know that the deception that had been employed by Satan did not stop to the first stage and second stage, which is pagan Rome and ecclesiastical Rome. As a matter of fact, the deception that Satan employed in the last stage of the exceeding great horn, which represented by the Protestant period, is even more complete than to the scheme that he employed prior to that time. Now, let us go back again, brothers and sisters, to our investigation. To repeat again, the shepherd's rod is very plain in track number 12 on page 21 and page 22 by saying, the beast 40 and 2-month period falls in the time of ecclesiastical Rome, the empire after pagan Rome, whereas its wounded state, Revelation 13 verse 3, symbolizes here during the Protestant period. Now, as far as the grammar is thus concerned, because according to 2SR 118, it says this grammatical rule is followed in the scriptures and it is one way to recognize present truth. And in 1SR 244, the shepherd's rod says that it is wonderful to note the inspiration of the scriptures. Perfect they are when their appointed time is come. Only at such an occasion are the scriptures grammatically correct. Now to repeat again, the statement on track number 12, page 21 and 22, the word whereas indicates opposite meaning to the previous statement. Now, the previous statement is explaining the 42 months prophecy when the leopard-like beast reigned contemporaneously with the nondescript beast. So that statement, reigned contemporaneously with the nondescript beast, plainly indicating that the leopard-like beast has its own dominion. Now, I would like to read again in 2TG number 17, page 7. Still further, the leopard-like beast blasphemed God and his tabernacle just as long as did Daniel's fourth beast in his second phase, ecclesiastical Rome. That is, a time and times and the dividing of time, 3 years and 6 months, 40 and 2 months. Plain it is then that the leopard-like beast reigned contemporaneously with the nondescript beast in his second phase, the phase of the little horn head. So the leopard-like beast reigned contemporaneously with the nondescript beast, second stage, the ecclesiastical Rome. And this is what track number 12, page 21 and page 22 is saying. It says, the beast 40 and 2-month period falls in the time of ecclesiastical Rome, the empire after pagan Rome, whereas its wounded state, Revelation 13, verse 3, symbolizes her during the Protestant period. I think this reading is not difficult to understand, that the wounded state of the leopard-like beast is during the Protestant period. And as far as the shepherd's rod is thus concerned, brothers and sisters, the Protestant period commenced after the Dark Ages. Now here in 2TG number 22, on page 21 and page 22, it says, this symbolical prophecy is seen to corroborate history. It points out that the Christian church at first suffered martyrdom, shown by the color red, then followed the dark ages of religion, when the church was in captivity, black. Following this came the Protestant period, the period of religious freedom. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters, that the Protestant period is the period followed after the Dark Ages, after 1798. And the shepherd's rod made it so plain that no, the wounded state of the leopard-like beast is in the Protestant period. No, we need to study now, brothers and sisters, what movement that God had raised in the period of the leopard-like beast. Because the voice of inspiration is plainly telling here in 2SR page 97, I would like to read again, by the divinely called movement and aided by the writings of the Spirit of prophecy, God's intention was to keep the deadly wound on the head. So, it is by the divinely called movement, unaided by the writings of the spirit of prophecy, that can keep or can warn the beast, or can warn the leopard-like beast. And we know, brothers and sisters, that it is the sword of the Spirit. Here in 1SR on page, let us read the statement here concerning the little horn head on the nondescript beast. It says here in page 215, the exile of the Pope in 1798 was only a sign of the material side of the wound, showing that the blow had been delivered, but the spiritual side of the truth has been altogether overlooked. Had not the head received the deadly wound by Martin Luther, the Pope could not have been put in prison by Bircher or by any other general, for before the sword was delivered, the Pope reigned supreme. So the sword mentioned here is the sword of the Spirit, or in other words, the Word of God, brothers and sisters. Now, I would like to read the statement here in tract number 8. Here in tract number 8, on page 59, the 5 smooth stones in David's bag, with one of which he slew Goliath, typify the 5-fold power in the antithetical shepherd's bag, the Bible, with one part of which God shall today smite the beast and his image, the nations, the antithetical Goliath. And since we know that it is by his word, in the form of a message, that he shall smite the nations, then obviously the 5 smooth stones represent 5 messages, the last of which is to wound the beast, destroy his image, and free God's people from the fear of the heathen. And the only beast mentioned here that had been wounded, brothers and sisters, is the leopard-like beast. Because the scarlet-colored beast, he has 7 unharmed heads. Now, since the shepherd's rod is plainly telling here in tract number 8, page 59, that the one that will wound the beast is the word of God in the form of a message. And then it says that among the 5 smooth stones, which represent the 5 messages in Matthew 20, the last message, the 11th hour, of which is to wound the beast. Who will wound the leopard-like beast? The 11th hour message. Now, that statement in tract number 8, page 59, completely corroborating to the statement in tract number 12, page 21 and page 22. Now, this is very important, brothers and sisters. We already read in the shepherd's rod, in answerer number 3, page 45, that the blow of Martin Luther affected only half of the ecclesiastical half. And we know that ecclesiastical half is the papacy. We already read in 2SR, right? Now here in 2SR, on page 87, it says, of the beast having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, John says, and I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death. The wounded head represents the papacy. Do not forget that. The wounded head represents the papacy. But the papacy in the Dark Ages is a combined power, religious and civil, because it is horned head. But the one that had been affected by the blow of Martin Luther is only the ecclesiastical part. And secondly, that ecclesiastical part is only half. So what is the other half by which it was not wounded by Martin Luther? Now, let us read again the statement in 2SR page 87. It says, the wounded head represents the papacy, wounded by Martin Luther, which was originally symbolized by the horn head of the nondescript beast, showing only the papal power and the authority. So it says, I would like to repeat again, the word original. The word original is the type. We already read in tract number 14 and also in 1SR 226. Now in tract number 14 on page, it says here on page 6, all of these counterparts then are but another scriptural intimation and confirmation of the age-old truth that history repeats itself and on a much broader scale than in the original. So the old truth is the original. And we know that the old truth represents the type. And the type is not the true object, according to 1SR 226. So the true object in the book of Revelation in reality is not during the Dark Ages. Do not forget that. The one that had been wounded by Martin Luther is the ecclesiastical half during the Dark Ages. But the particular object in view is not during the Dark Ages. Let us be God's real people, logical thinkers, and not faith hunters. In 2 TG 24:23. Why is it that the particular object in view is not during the Dark Ages? First, because they have no understanding concerning the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. Therefore, they are not profited whatever the truth contained in the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, according to 2SR 111. It says, the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation were written especially for the generation living at the time of the end, and not so much for the Roman world. See Daniel 12 verse 4. They had no understanding of the writings that pertain to the last days, and thus could not have profited by them. So if the particular object in view is during the Dark Ages, then the particular people that is intended by the writings of Daniel and Revelation must be the people during the Dark Ages. And how could it be? They have no understanding concerning the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation. It was sealed. And B.T. Hotep is very plain in 2 TG number 7 on page 3. Daniel was told to shut and seal the book even to the time of the end. The book therefore was not for the understanding of the people before the time of the end. So the understanding was not given by God to the people living prior to the time of the end. And the time of the end, in more specific terms, it says here in 3 symbolic code, number 8 to 10, page 8, it says that, I would like to read, this time must have begun when the book began to be opened, but if we must declare the beginning of that time in more specific terms, it in a spatial sense began in the year 1844. 3 symbolic code, 8 to 10, page 8. Therefore, the people living prior to 1844 backwards, they have not been profited by the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation because they have no understanding concerning the book, brothers and sisters. Now, if the symbolization of the leopard like this is pertaining already in the past, then for what for? Brothers and sisters, such understanding that had been given by God to us, it is useless. It is out of value. That all the significance of the book of Revelation, more particularly to the leopard like this, is already in the past. No, it is only the groundwork. The particular object in view, brothers and sisters, is during the 11th hour. Now, here in track number 5, I would like to read again. On page 34, it says, fulfilled prophecies are seen therefore to be employed by the scriptures only as groundwork for that part of prophecy which is yet to be fulfilled. And secondly, why is it that we should deny the fact that the shepherd's rod made it so plain that the wounded state of the leopard-like beast is during the Protestant period? Track number 12, page 21 and page 22. Shall we deny this absolute fact that the wounded state of the leopard-like beast is during the Protestant period? And then the shepherd's rod declared clearly in 2 TG 22, pages 21 and page 22, that the Protestant period began after the Dark Ages, during the religious freedom. And third, according to track number 8, page 59, the one that will wound the beast, brothers and sisters, it is the Word of God, the sword of the Spirit. But the absolute fact is that it was already predicted beforehand that the one that will wound the leopard-like beast is the 11th hour message, according to that reading in track number 8, page 59. Does the 11th hour message already in existence in the Dark Ages? Think it thoroughly, my dear brothers and sisters. Now, I would like to go back again to our reading in 2SR from pages 56 to page 61 and page 62. It is concerning Satan attempts to establish ecclesiastical governments. The term ecclesiastical governments, brothers and sisters, is pointing to the governments by which the civil authority is engaging in ecclesiastical aspects. Now here in 2SR page 56, 61 to 62. The shepherd's rod says, let us read again, attempts to establish ecclesiastical governments. The question may arise, what hindered Satan from establishing an ecclesiastical monarchy before the closing period of the Old Testament? The only answer that can be given is the Jewish nation permitted him to becloud their eyes. They were told not to make a confederacy with the world, but unmindful of the command, they made a league with the Romans, and that is what helped Satan to accomplish his scheme. Sometimes, brothers and sisters, if you look at the art of argument used by inspiration, it's amazing because the question is what hindered Satan that he had not been able to establish an ecclesiastical monarchical government in the days of Babylonian Empire before the closing period of the Old Testament. But the answer given is that it is not the things that hindered, but it is the thing that helped Satan. And it says that the Jewish nation permitted him to becloud their eyes. What does it mean that the Jewish nation permitted Satan to becloud their eyes? They were told not to make a confederacy with the world, but unmindful to the command, they made a league with the Romans, and that is what helped Satan to accomplish his scheme. And then the quotation is Daniel chapter 3, the entire chapter of Daniel chapter 3. And that is the historical event that Nebuchadnezzar attempts, or in reality it is Satan according to the reading. At that time, Satan is trying to establish an ecclesiastical monarchical government through the instrumentality of King Nebuchadnezzar. And the devil thought that it was Daniel, the hindrance of such plan. Therefore, he permitted the king Nebuchadnezzar to send Daniel into a far distant place. But what happened? What happened to the decree of the king? It came to naught because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were still there. Brothers and sisters, now I would like to read the statement here in page 61. Then these men came forth unhurt, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It is wonderful what God accomplished with but 3 slaves against a world empire. These 3 men, with faith in God, broke the satanic contrivance, abolished the establishment of an ecclesiastical government, and brought the king's decree to naught. So, Satan admitted the fact that he was mistaken. Now, when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were already dead, Satan again attempts to establish an ecclesiastical monarchical government in the days of the Medo-Persian Empire. But what happened? He was mistaken again because Daniel was still there. And it says here, Satan worked out a similar plot in the Medo-Persian government with plans that were carried out by intrigue, taking the king unawares. Though Daniel was cast into the lion's den, he too came out unharmed, but his enemies perished as did those who threw the 3 Hebrews into the fiery furnace. Now think it thoroughly, brothers and sisters. Would you think it is just a mere happenstance and just an accident that it was in 1888, right? That in our modern times, Satan attempts to establish ecclesiastical monarchical government, or we call it the mark of the beast system. Because B.T. Hotep called it the type of the image of the beast. Now let me read to you tract number 12. Here in tract number 12, on page 28, a full realization of the glorious reward that awaits mankind will even now compel men to shout for joy, and a like realization of the dreadful penalty that awaits all who fail to make God their refuge will cause them even now to weep and gnash their teeth, that all might realistically see these alternative prospects and be impelled thereby to repentance. The Lord has been at supreme pains not only to record a graphic description of the evil, which through the instrumentality of the beast, Satan has determined upon the whole world, but also aforehand to make of a similar evil a perfect type of the image of the beast. And then the quotation is Daniel chapter 3, verse 1 to 6. That is the time when the hindrance is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now here, Brother Hotep says that the image of the beast, or we commonly call it as the mark of the beast system, the type is what occurred in the days of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, quoted in Daniel chapter 3, verse 1 to 6. Now, I fully believe, brothers and sisters, according to the testimony of Sister White in volume 5, 152, let us read the statement. And this occurrence occurred in 1888. Now, it says here, let us read. The time is coming when we cannot sell at any price. Talking about volume 5, 152. The decree will soon go forth, prohibiting men to buy or sell of any man save him that hath the mark of the beast. We come near having this realized in California a short time since, but this was only the threatening of the blowing of the four winds. As yet they are healed by the four angels. We're not just ready. There is a work yet to be done, and then the angels will be bidden to let go, that the four winds may blow upon the earth. That will be a decisive time for God's children, a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Now is our opportunity to work. But the most important thing, brothers and sisters, that I would like to emphasize in that occurrence, that for sure, if Alonzo Jones, Elite Wagoner, and Sister White were not in the United States of America at that time, for sure, without any doubts, brothers and sisters, the mark of the beast system will be implemented in the United States of America in 1888. And that is why it is called the American Sentinel and its mission concerning the work of Alonzo Jones, Elite Wagoner, as well as Sister White. In 718 in volume 5, it says the American Sentinel and its mission. So that is very plain in this chapter, brothers and sisters, concerning, I would like to read in page 719, if you could. You can read the entire chapter if you wish. I would like to read only some portion. It says, there have been surprising indifference and inactivity in this time of peril. Truth, present truth, is what the people need. And if the startling significance of the movements now in progress in regard to the religious amendments had been realized by our brethren in every church, if they had discerned in these movements the plain direct fulfillment of prophecy calling upon them to arouse to the demands of the crisis, they would not now be in such stupor and death-like slumber. But historically, we know that Alonzo Jones appeared, brothers and sisters, to the Congress and show all the arguments. And without that presence, brothers and sisters, for sure, the mark of the beast system was already implemented at that time. Completely typifying in the occurrence in the past that if Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not there, the decree will be implemented. Now, I fully believe that when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego died, the same in the antitypical fulfillment that after Alonzo Jones, after Elite Wagoner, and Ellen White died, brothers and sisters, still there was antitypical Daniel. That was Pete Houghton. Now, brothers and sisters, what is the present truth lesson? Let us go back again to the reading in 2SR. It says here, page 61. The only answer that can be given is the Jewish nation permitted him to becloud their eyes. What does it mean? That the Jewish nation, the entire Jewish nation, permitted Satan to becloud their eyes. Or in other words, when Malachi died, the Jewish nation have no more moral power to withstand the schemes of the devil. They could no longer detect the schemes of the devil. As a matter of fact, the illustration given by the shepherd's rod, let me read to you here in 2SR. It says that the illustration in 2SR page 103, it says, Satan had drawn the dirt brush over the eyes of the highest human intellect at the close of the Old Testament dispensation. Remember, the statement we read in 2SR page 56, it says here, the question may arise, what hindered Satan from establishing an ecclesiastical monarchy before the closing period of the Old Testament? when does the closing period of the Old Testament begins? That is, brothers and sisters, after Malachi died, the last prophet that God sent to God's ancient people in the Old Testament. Since that time, it says here in 2SR page 100, let me read to you the statement given by the Voice of Inspiration. In page 129, it says, "Thus they had been without a prophet since the time of Malachi." It says, had they obeyed God's voice through His messengers, He would not have left them to fall under the Roman yoke. What period of time by which they were fallen into the Roman yoke? That is after Malachi died, according to that reading. And that is why here it says in 2SR page 61, the only answer that can be given is the Jewish nation permitted him to becloud their eyes. They were told not to make a confederacy with the world, but unmindful of the command, they made a league with the Romans. And that is what helped Satan to accomplish his scheme. Or in other words, Satan knows that the presence of inspiration is the greatest hindrance that he could not be able to accomplish his scheme. And therefore, what he did, because when he studied first, he failed in the Babylonian Empire because Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego were there. Now he attempts again in introducing it in the Medo-Persian Empire, but he was still mistaken because Daniel was still there. Now at last, Satan find out that as long as there is an inspired servant of God, there is no possibility that he could be able to accomplish his scheme. Now what Satan did, he tried to the utmost of his ability that the people of God will reject the prophets. Therefore, by rejecting the prophets, the time came that God no longer sent prophet among God's people, and that is after Malachi died. And what happened? They immediately fallen into the Roman yoke. And this is the statement it says here in 2SR page 103. Satan had drawn the dirt brush over the eyes of the highest human intellect, even though that among them there is a human being by which he possessed highest human intellect. But as long as that human being possessing highest human intellect is uninspired, it is nothing. That is why in 2TG number 9 on page 7, it says, "We know that the Spirit who leads into all truth and all knowledge is not himself led or taught by any man. Hence, why should we depend on any man that is divested of inspiration to pass judgment on inspired truth?" The word points out that not men only, but even the nation are as nothing. Even the whole nations, the entire Jewish nations, it is nothing as long as there is no more inspired servant among them. Even all of them possess that intellect which is categorized as human highest intellect, still nothing. In tract number 15, it says, even that human intellect possess perfection by which such attribute belongs only to God. But the shepherd's rod says that even though, it says here in page 75, tract number 15, it says, human wisdom has already demonstrated its inability of itself to comprehend the mysteries of God's word. Even though they be delineated as perfect as only God Himself can delineate. In fact, the longer a person on his own initiative tries to explain the mysteries of God, the further away from the truth he drifts. And that is why the shepherd's rod says that our human wisdom, in reality, black as darkness itself. It says here in 2SR page 263, it says, "My brethren, to obey the word of God and be true to principle for your own good is not asking too much of you. Will you let self and sin rob you of a crown of life? Your human wisdom and worldly knowledge will prove to be as black as darkness itself if you should allow the wily fool to rob you of the celestial bliss that should be yours throughout the ceaseless ages of eternity." Look at the situation, brothers and sisters, here in 2SR 103, saying, Satan had thrown the dirt brush over the eyes of the highest human intellect at the close of the Old Testament dispensation, or in other words, after the prophet Malachi died, Satan had been able to easily drawn the dirt brush over the eyes of the highest human intellect without any hindrance, because the hindrance were already dead. And it says, their spiritual eyes were so skillfully plastered that they could not see a bolt of lightning as bright as the sun in the darkest night. 2SR page 103. Now, brothers and sisters, let me ask you a question. I know you are familiar. No one would say that there is no mark of the beast system. It was predicted beforehand that there must be mark of the beast system. Second, where such mark of the beast system will be implemented, for sure, the abundance of evidence shows that it must be in the United States of America. The greatest question that I would like to leave to all who are listening and viewing this program, and we will continue this subject, what is the spiritual side, my dear brothers and sisters? Because the greatest possibility that we might overlook the spiritual side, the same as what had been happened during the Dark Ages. They overlooked the spiritual side, that it is Martin Luther that delivered the deadly blow to the ecclesiastical authority of the papacy. So to repeat again, brothers and sisters, this subject is still unfinished, and we will be dealing this subject very careful, and we will guarantee to you that if you will only follow, listening, and viewing this program, we can guarantee you the assurance 100% that all the messages that we will going to share to all the brethren is supported by Thus saith the Lord, found in the Shepherd's Rod publications. Thank you very much, brothers and sisters, for listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a wonderful evening.